to better handle the situation. Agriculture is one of the most affected categories in that sense. And some predictions are done in order to see how the quantities in terms of agricultural yield is expected to fluctuate because of climate change. And we see here from the data accumulated that rice is expected to decrease by 35%, wheat by 20%, sorghum by 50%, barley 13%, and maize 16%. Well, such values indicate the emergent need for action related to current and future issues. One approach designed to deal with the problem that climate change poses towards agriculture is known to be as climate-smart agriculture. Practically, what this method suggests is like several actions should be undertaken so as to provide relief for its influence. And there are the three main goals that CCA has, and the first one is to cut down the greenhouse gas emissions. The second one would be to boost productivity in terms of agricultural yield, and the third one would be reducing the effects of climatic stresses.
Ida, I don't want to miss anything. Can you speak a little bit slowly, just a little bit, not much?
Okay, yeah, sure.
Give some time so that I can comprehend something.
Okay, yeah, I will try to be slower.
Yeah.
So, what we try to actually take into account for our case study is we want to utilize multi-criteria decision-making techniques in order to provide a support system for farmers in terms of what practices are better for them to implement in the farming system. So, said differently, what climate-smart agricultural practices can be implemented in the farming system so as to provide relief for the negative consequences of climate change. And in order to have a better case study, we focus solely on the agricultural product of cereals. And we have inspected the region of Navarra in Spain. And here, because we want to actually suggest to farmers what kind of plans they need to do for the farming system, alternatives would represent possible action plans for them. And the criteria will help us to evaluate these alternatives. The decision makers in our case would be the cereal farmers. And we have two methods that we try to integrate in the model. So analytic hierarchy process and technique for order of preference by similarity to ideal solution or TOPSIS. So AHP will be useful to reveal the importance of criteria, while TOPSIS will actually help us for the rating of alternatives. In order to get the input data for the further steps of the study, we have both designed and launched a survey. The survey has been distributed to cereal farmers of Grupo AN. So Grupo AN is the second largest cooperative in Spain. And we managed to reach 27 farmers, but only 10 of them have actually answered. And from these 10 answered surveys, only 9 of them were complete. So we actually had to discard one of them. And the survey was active for a period of, let's say, more or less 1 month, from December 2020 to January 21. And the communication was held by emails because this was a period where the COVID was quite harsh, especially in that region. And the survey is actually composed of 2 phases. In the first one, we asked farmers to make pairwise comparison in order to reveal the priorities of criteria. And in the second one, we tried to rate alternatives based on the criteria that we have already defined. So when we tried to see the climate-smart agriculture practices, obviously we had a much more broader list. But because this is a very focused study, we used the experts' opinion and literature review to narrow down it. And actually here the expert system group consists of 1 soil expert and 1 farming system expert. So we managed to get 10 alternatives that we would suggest to farmers in this region, specifically for the product of cereals. And the first one will be water harvesting, and it follows by breeding for resistance to droughts and floods, enhancing soil moisture retention capacity, changing cropping pattern and diversification, no-till farming, mulch and cover cropping, improving irrigation efficiency, water recycling, monitoring, modeling, and forecasting system for pesticides usage, and supplementing irrigation. In order to define criteria and subcriteria, again, we relied on literature and also in the experts' opinion, but because the number of studies that has been conducted for agriculture and multi-criteria decision-making techniques is quite low in number, the experts' opinion was more decisive in the process. So the first criterion that we consider is compatibility with natural resources, and here we take into account the available land, the available soil, and the available water. The second one is adaptability to farm's conditions. So we need to see how the culture and tradition of the farm is, the competence and knowledge and skills of farmers. In the third one, we try to see how feasible these courses of plans are. So we need to see the cost of implementation, timeliness, how robust and resilient are these alternatives. In the fourth one, we try to foresee the impacts on society, both on current and future generations. And we also need to take into account the effects. What would be the short, medium, and long-term effects? Obviously, we need to take into account the frequency and criticality of side effects too. So after trying to merge up everything that we have said so far, from the first part of the survey, we tried to derive the priorities of the criteria, and we ranked them based on the priority values. And we see here that feasibility is the most prominent one with the value of 76.83%, followed by adaptability to farms condition, then compatibility with natural resources, effects and impacts on society. And when we try to see what priorities of sub-criteria are, not surprisingly, we see that resilience, cost of implementation, timeliness, and robustness with values, let's say, higher than 50% have ranked first. And this can actually give us a hint in order to see what do farmers in this region, like, let's say, focus more. And because we see that, and we know that these practices are actually quite expensive. And yeah, most probably farmers would need some pension, something like that, in order to implement those. And they need to see how the resilient are actually, so it's worth undertaking them or not. And taking into consideration these priorities, we would go to the second phase of the study, where we try to reveal the similarity values for our alternatives. And as Topsis suggests, mulch and cover cropping, let's say, is the best alternative that we would suggest farmers in this region to implement, with a similarity value of 0.93. And because this value is quite close to 1, we can say that it's quite a satisfactory one to recommend to farmers in this region. And as the presentation is about to end, I would like to just give some, let's say, conclusion remarks and recommendations for future work. Let's say, we obviously would like to increase the number of participants. As you already saw, we reached actually 27 farmers, but only 10 of them managed to answer. And this is because they usually don't have the information that they need to have. And maybe they are not aware that such practices exist, or maybe they don't even have the financial possibilities to undergo such a process. And the second one would be to maybe group farmers based on their demographic characteristics, their socioeconomic status, the size of the land that they cultivate, and the type of the crops that they are growing. In this way, we can try to compare the results of the groups that we have created, and after making the necessary adjustments, we can launch the survey in different countries so as to have cross-cultural studies, let's say. And I would like to thank you for your attention, and I would be happy to take your questions, if any.
Oh my God, Ida, you definitely don't have time management issues.
Don't I?
And let me tell you something. It was an interesting work. I actually read your paper as well. But a man I respect once told me that if you have problems with managing your pace, then 10 words in 10 seconds.
I talk too fast.
Yeah. Don't worry. We will ask you, and I'm sure that you will answer all the questions and you will clarify all the details for us. Any questions?
I have one.
Yes,
of course. In Spain.
In Navarra's region. So this is northern Spain, and where actually this is
Spain. Navarra is in the Basque country.
No, Navarra is the region just next to Basque countries.
Navarra is in Spain.
She said northern. She said northern
Spain.
Northern.
Yeah, I know. I've been there. Don't worry about it. You're running the bulls on there. I understand that.
Yeah.
Why do you choose Navarra?
Because, well, in order to get data, I started a fellowship with the European Institute of Technology, and one of the partners that they had was headquartered in Spain. And then when I started to work with them, I moved to Navarra. And because this was a period where COVID actually was quite hard in Spain, right? And because I couldn't really move from one region of Spain to the other, because I was already in Navarra, I focused my study there because I had to obviously meet the expert group and team and everything else. And I had to be, let's say, in place.
Did you run with the bulls?
No, not really. It was canceled that year because of COVID. I couldn't. That's a pity.
That's a different decision model.
Yeah.
I have a question, Ida.
Yes.
Couldn't you use rating approach instead of using Topsis?
Well,
Did you consider rating approach? Because when you have so much alternatives, I was just thinking you can use the rating approach. I would like to hear Lucy's view about it as well. Yeah, what do you think?
Well, one could use other methods too, right? But this is the way that we designed the study, actually.
I see.
And maybe there are like more, let's say, appropriate methods to work on that. But this is how we actually managed.
Yeah.
Maybe
I
Louis can actually give us
maybe
the
you
better.
you can publish better when you integrate with another methodology. I think publication editors or reviewers, they give more familiar. But I think it could be done with using the rating approach as well. This is what I think. I don't know. What do you think, Luis? Instead of
I think that, yeah, well, it is different. This is a different way of thinking, right? I mean, you're thinking about what's the ideal and how close are you to the ideal, in which requires the entire set of priorities as opposed to ratings, right? When you choose each alternative and you rate them. But then you have to decide for each of the criteria, the rating scale. You have to define. You can't just choose a generic one. You have to build your own. And that's a tough cookie. That's very tough, especially if you have many criteria, right? So
yeah.
But yes, it would be interesting comparing what you get. Because rating is very simple for people. Anyway, that's.
I would suggest, for example, after eliminating some alternatives, for the last quite a few, maybe use some different use AHP, AMP once you have eliminated some less important ones. Is it possible, Ida? What do you think?
Well, if we talk specifically about the set of alternatives that we considered, we initially had like 30 of them. But then when we saw what was going in the past few years in terms of climate change, then we narrowed down it to 10 by considering, obviously, the opinion of the soil expert and the farming system expert. And after that point, we decided to just work on this set of opportunities as they saw it more appropriate, because in the literature review, there is really a few number of studies regarding this, and that's why we saw it as a more appropriate approach to continue with their actually suggestions.
But these results are really location dependent, geographically dependent, obviously, right?
Yes, exactly. And because our focus was specifically in Spain, that's why we decided to.
But Navarra has a quite different weather as, for example, if you go down to the Andalusia.
That's why we considered only the region of Navarra, actually, because the cereal system is like everywhere in Spain, but we did it only for Navarra for this reason, because the temperature like differs a lot, and obviously they don't really have the same challenges in terms of climate change.
Right.
That's why we narrowed down only specifically Navarra and only for cereals.
Right. Very nice.
That was really very good presentation, Ida. I attended few student presentations. This was one of the good ones.
Very well.
We had some other very good ones. Yours was really very good one. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ida.